Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to On Purpose, the #1 podcast in the world. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you for taking out time out of your days and nights, whenever you listen, to learn, to grow, to thrive, to choose to educate, enlighten, and enliven yourselves. And you know that I'm always trying to get guests that I think are coming from a really authentic place. And today's guest is exactly that. I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest, who's an American actor and singer. You may know him from Chuck, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and most recently, he actually plays Shazam in DC's new movie, Shazam. So I'm so excited. Zachary Levi, thank you so much for being here.
Honored to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me. Jay Shetty, everyone. Jay Shetty.
Oh God, that's so good.
I practice it at night.
You were doing accents earlier too, and I was thinking, wow, this is really good.
Was I doing accents?
You were.
What was I doing?
You're doing the Italian.
Oh, Italian. Yeah. That's right. You always have to do it with the hands, though. Otherwise, you're not really doing it well.
Yeah, you've got it down. But no, I'm genuinely, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I'm genuinely so grateful that you're here.
Me too.
When my team and I were looking through your work, your words, your insights, the types of things that you choose to speak about, whether you're on interviews or social media, I feel so aligned and connected to them.
Thanks, man.
And I was like, one thing I love about this podcast and the reason why we do it is I want to go beyond the actor, beyond the singer, beyond what someone does day to day.
Into the human being.
Into the human being, like you said, the first thing you said, Zachary Levi, the human being.
Human being.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I really appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here.
But yeah, so I want to start because what I love is that I feel like the world's just getting to learn about you even more and more and more and more right now, and that's very exciting.
I mean, so I've been blessed enough to be kicking around this town or this business rather for about 20 years. I mean, almost exactly. I started auditioning for film and television when I was 18. It was April of 1999, and now it's April of 2019, and it's been a crazy 20 years. I mean, this town can be incredibly exciting. It can also be incredibly dark, a very difficult place to try and find yourself, particularly when you don't know that you're trying to find yourself, as I've come to find out. So to be here now, and I mean, I've always had a really blessed career in that I started working pretty much right away when I was about 18. I started booking gigs, and I've been able to build, some bit of a social awareness, or people. I've been living in the public eye to some extent, but this is a whole nother level of what that is, and I'll say, man, I think the timing of all of it, and we can get into more details of it, obviously, but it's one of the things I talk about so much on my social media is mental health and loving oneself, and self-love, self-care, and those are things I didn't really quite understand until I didn't want to live anymore a few years ago, and then went and did a super deep dive into therapy, and had a ton of work that I was doing with psychiatrists and psychotherapists, dialectic behavioral therapy, art therapy, meditation therapy, life coaching, like going into the gym, meditation and prayer, and my friends and family loving me through all of that, and really just saving my own life. And on the heels of that, I got this job, and that is no coincidence as far as I'm concerned. I think that as a deeply spiritual person who believes in a creator, I believe that this was all waiting to happen, perhaps as things time out in the way that they do. I think that they do in very big ways and meaningful ways. And I think that the timing of me being able to now have this platform is directly tied to the work that I went and did on my life, so that I can now talk about that work and talk about the importance of it. And it's awesome, man. I'm really grateful that not only that I have this incredible new job, and that it's changing my life on a daily basis. I mean, I still walk around and, most people don't know who the heck I am. That's totally, most of the time I've lived in a reasonable anonymity most of my career, which has been quite an amazing blessing, because I don't know what it's like to be Brad Pitt. I don't know what it's like to be Tom Cruise. I don't know what it's like to not be able to go anywhere without people mobbing you or whatever. Or if people do, I don't know. Maybe Tom Cruise walks around and people don't mob him either. I have no idea. Maybe, with the right set of sunglasses and a hat, you're good. But I've always believed that you be grateful for what you have when you have it. I appreciated that anonymity. If I lose some of that moving into this next phase of my life, then so be it. I'm happy for the trade-off to be able to now have more of a platform to be able to speak love into the world, because I think I do believe that God created me to do what I'm doing, to be an entertainer. I think I have a specific skill set, and I've always had this skill set. Even since I was a little kid, I was very good at entertaining people and could keep growing at it and figuring it out in ways that I couldn't grow and figure out other things in my life. Still trying to figure out how to be a better basketball player. But to be able to believe that I was created to do that is one thing. But after having gone through all the therapy and the life-saving stuff that I've done and learned, and the self-love that I've learned, I really believe more than that. I think God created me to hopefully just be, or really has created all of us to be conduits of love, conduits of life, conduits of light. And if we can get through our own traumas and our own pain and our own injuries and find healing in that, then it allows us to be even stronger, more efficacious conduits. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's all very cool. I just daily feel like a deep gratitude, like to the point where I just start crying sometimes, and it's incredible to go from a place where I felt such deep despair and I was crying from despair to now feeling like I just tear up, feeling nothing but like the deepest of peace and joy and I mean, even now, even just talking about it, I just get overwhelmed. I'm like, I can't believe that this is my life right now. It's so cool.
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful. We're 3 minutes in, and Zachary Levi is already talking about self-love.
Hell yeah, man.
Mental health, going deep in life, talking about humanity. I love that. And I'm so glad that we've started there. Like, this is brilliant. Like, usually I'm like, okay, like, we're like crescendo, like we're moving
How
through.
How do I get this out of them?
And like, here we go with Zach, and it's like we're 3 minutes in, and you're already saying everything that I know everyone who's listening right now will absolutely fall in love with you, because that's what this is about. Like, this whole community is about that. Now, I want to, what's beautiful about what you've just done for us is you've kind of laid out all the things I want to dive into
let's do
today.
Yeah.
So I love that, because everyone's got a feel for who you are now already.
Sure.
And I want you to be able to tell that story in depth, because I'm guessing, and I love what you said there, that when you were crying out of despair and now you're crying out of gratitude, those two different, I'm also guessing that because of your faith, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm also guessing that because of your faith, because of your search for meaning in your own life, that even those tears, how far were they from helplessness versus how far were they hopeful? Like, where were you in that space when you were really in that middle? How much were they helpless, but how much were they full of hope?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, most of my life I've been a pretty optimistic and hopeful person, but there have been seasons. There have been seasons of life that have just destroyed me, and sometimes I wasn't even aware that they were destroying me. In fact, I think a lot of the times we're not really aware of the destruction that's going on. And a lot of that we play a big part in. I think a lot of the destruction that we feel in our life is self-motivated, is self-destructive. We don't know that we're doing that. We're trying to feel like we belong, that we have worth. I think from literally the minute we come into this world, I mean, even though we're not quite aware of it when we're that young, but we're looking for cues from our parents. We're looking for cues from our friends, our family, our school, our society. Who am I? Do I have worth in this world? And unfortunately, I think most people's parents are not qualified to be able to even help them truly understand a lot of these concepts, because they were never taught, which then makes all mental health, as far as I'm concerned, a completely generational thing. These are just handed down year after year after year. So my I think that I was given a strong enough will and spirit and ego, if you will, talking about like sapiens and all that, like the ego that we build, which is our survival mechanism, and we get banged around and it's denting us and it's forming this thing. But, I survived, and I survived pretty well. And I found entertainment as a way of survival. I found love through entertainment. If I could make somebody laugh, and I could get those applause, I was like, oh, there's my purpose. I have value now because I can make this person applaud or give them a good time or whatever. But, when the applause dies down, it becomes a very lonely life. And then you try to fill that loneliness with in all manner of things. So I think for a long time, though I was optimistic, and though my faith, which is kind of rooted mainly in Christianity, although I would say my Christianity feels much more Buddhist than Baptist, I think that I always had faith, a deep faith, and therefore a deep hope with that faith. But under all of that, even, or let's say above all of that, I don't know which current was, which one's sitting on the other, but there was a tremendous amount of despair. There was a tremendous amount of hopelessness, because I still didn't quite understand what it meant to just love myself. And I think that's honestly, that's why I can't stop talking about it, because after having gone through what I've gone through, I really genuinely believe that it's probably the biggest root issue that we have in the world. Amen. Absolutely. World leaders right now, pick a country. Our country, here, other places, there are people who are in positions of power, and they're in positions of power because they've been chasing worth. Mm-hmm. They don't know how bereft they are of their own self-worth. They have been flexing power and, making moves and feeling, oh, if I make enough money, if I have enough power and if I have enough money, look at some of the biggest, CEOs or most, wealthy people in the world. I think they're probably some of, and you hear these things all the time, like, well, the most successful people in the world are some of the loneliest or whatever. And you go, yeah, great. I would take billions of dollars over, whatever the alternative is. But I really do think that so many of them, even though they might not even realize it, are hopeless. They don't realize that they are terrified deep down inside that even their billions or trillions or whatever they've got, it's still not going to give them any actual real value going into whatever is beyond this world, or even while you're here in this world, So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent. But going back though, what I was experiencing, although again, like you unpack a lot of this stuff in therapy, but I grew up in a home where my mom was a beautiful and crazy intelligent, vibrant, dynamic woman who honestly probably could have done anything. She could have been a CEO of a Fortune 500. She could have been a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. She was an incredible force that unfortunately was, that grew up in a home where her mother psychologically abused her and her siblings. And we knew that a little bit growing up, but you just hear mom, honestly, just like yelling about how her mom was such a horrible mom. And it's a difficult thing when you're growing up now with a mom who didn't understand the damage that did to her. And so she just carried on that abuse. And she was very psychologically abusive to me and my sisters, not knowing that she was. And that was one of the biggest things I learned in therapy was as I was forgiving myself and understanding how to forgive my mom, because I just started visualizing the 5-year-old version of my mom getting, hit or literally left on the side of the road when they were, on some family road trip. And my grandma was mad at her and was like, kicked her out of the car and left her there for hours. And you start realizing how much trauma, like we all experience trauma. Trauma isn't just like some really crazy hardcore thing that like, oh, you got like blunt force trauma to the head. I mean, we're dealing with these things on a regular basis, on a daily basis sometimes. And my mom was madly traumatized by my grandmother, and she never went and got the help that she needed to get. And so that just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And the life that I grew up with in my family really, really messed me up, more so than I ever gave it credit for, because my ego was strong enough to keep me going. It kept me going. I was surviving and I was surviving. It's incredible how evolutionarily we've been able to create this whole persona and survive through this stuff. But as a lot of people will tell you, and whether that's like a midlife crisis or whatever it is, you get to a place, and mine was, I basically got to, I had a gnarly childhood growing up. I didn't realize just how much that affected me and my ability to love myself and therefore love others. I ended up getting married and divorced in a very short amount of time to a girl that I thought I was deeply, madly in love with, and I still have a tremendous amount of love for. But we were two, I think, broken people, finding each other, which is what happens in a lot of relationships, I think. Because if you haven't done the self-work and you don't know that you needed to do that self-work, then you're going to keep attracting the wrong person, and they're going to be attracting you as the wrong person, and so on and so forth. And so then I ended up getting that was a really, really dark period of my life. And then I got divorced, and then months later, within the same year, my mom died very unexpectedly. Although she and I didn't really have a relationship for about 10 years by that point, and it was really, I mourned for a couple of days when she died. But I then kind of, I was okay, or I thought I was okay. I thought I had dealt with it. And then, work this business again. It's a really gnarly business, and it can really knock you around and beat you up. And then I made this move to Texas because I've had all of these crazy, amazing dreams of, well, I think amazing. Who knows if they pan out? But to go build, to go build a film studio that's also a resort, that's also a commune, that's also like literally, I want to make a better world, and I think that we can do that if we all want it. And we have to just want it bad enough. And I think that if you have a platform to maybe go and try and do that, and you've got some means and some finances to go and maybe build a new type of community that can be an example of how we can get back to knowing each other and loving each other and trusting each other and communing again with one another and knowing your neighbor, and kids running around and parents not feeling like they have to helicopter parent them all the time and all of that stuff. So anyway, that all brought me to Texas. But then I got there, and then I felt, after many years of feeling very optimistic and feeling a deep faith, I felt quite abandoned by God, to be honest. I felt like all of the things that led me there then left me alone, and left me sitting alone and very deeply hopeless. And that was right around my 37th birthday. And I didn't really understand what the point of life was anymore. I felt like I had fought really hard to go and be a good person, to go and love people, to be an example, to try and use my platform and privilege for good. And I felt like all of that amounted to me now being completely alone and completely hopeless. And thank God, I had friends and family that were there and kind of holding my hand and propping me up through some really, really dark moments and times. And then I found this place that I think was essentially initially created to be a place where CEOs of very large companies that were dealing with major burnout, major depression, major anxieties, could go and just, get some major deep healing. And I went, and it was 3 weeks of just like the most intense. I got there, and, I fell through the door of that place. It was like, I got to 37 and I just fell through the door of therapy, and I said, I don't know who I am, or I don't think I know who I am, because I don't know how it got me here. So I need to know who I am, and I need to know how I got here. And I need to make sure that that never happens again, because I don't want to die, but I don't understand why I should keep living. And through all of those things that I was saying earlier, all those various forms of therapy and psychiatry and again, like, doing yoga twice a week and Pilates twice a week and at the gym 4 days, because that's all incredibly crucial to our mental and emotional well-being. Those things all essentially, and the prayer of this, particularly this one woman who I don't think it's any coincidence that God has brought these people into my life throughout my journey, but there have been women, older maternal women, that have come along through my journey that have been those surrogate mothers for me when my mother wasn't my mother and couldn't be my mother. And this woman prayed me back to life. And between that and all of the tools that I was learning about, learning about how bad my self-talk was, that's something that I don't think a lot of people even quite understand, how important it is of how you speak to yourself.
Let's dive into that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's dive into that. No, and when I'm listening to you,
sorry, by the way, I am incredibly verbose and tangential, FYI.
It's great.
So I'll just keep going unless you.
It's great. No. And I won't, because I love listening, because I think that's important too.
Sure, it is.
I think as much as it is important for me to guide, I also like to listen and see where you're taking it, because, and this is advice to anyone who's listening to a friend or a family member. You learn more when you listen.
Yeah.
And I'm learning so much more about you than I could have ever gained if I was talking,
Sure.
which is awesome. When I'm listening to you though, what I find is that today I'm sitting in front of someone who I find is extremely passionate, feels that they're living their calling, feels that they're doing what they were born to do, which is very different from the self that you're displaying or sharing that you were before.
Yeah.
And so what I want to dive into, we'll dive into the self-talk too, but what I want to dive into is, let's take you back to that 6-year-old boy who was getting excited by dance, singing, acting, but at the same time had this home experience that you were describing with your mother at the time.
Yeah.
Is that when singing, dancing, and acting became that outlet, became that expression, became that connect, which you weren't getting at home? Is that when it was, or was it actually just something that came naturally?
I mean, I think I can't imagine that there's not some correlation to what my childhood was and then ultimately where I found outlet. I was the middle boy between two sisters. My dad wasn't in the picture. I was literally just like floating in a sea of estrogen. Like, it was my sisters, my mom, my two aunts, my cousin Nikki, who's like our third sister, my grandma. Family outings were, going to JCPenney's and shopping. I mean, that's what it felt like. And so as a middle kid, you're looking to, have a voice and have an identity of your own. That's one thing. Being the only boy, I was constantly having to kind of create my own worlds of imagination and entertainment and not really having parents. Like, my dad was gone. My mom, God bless her and God rest her soul, she had a lot of issues and she wasn't the best. She was really incredible as a mom in some respects, and I'm really grateful for those things that she did. For example, like, she was way ahead of the curve when it came to like a naturopathic lifestyle. We were taking vitamins and like barley green and not having sugared cereal or soda when we were kids. And when all the other kids are like, you don't have Cocoa Puffs? And I was like, I know, it's the worst. But I'm so grateful that my mom knew and cared about all that stuff well before the curve, because I don't now have problems dealing with my sugar levels and obesity in ways that a lot of other people have been addicted to this stuff for so long, because sugar is a crazy addiction. Anyway, again, tangential. But so, yeah, man, I think I was always just trying to, and I always had like a super vibrant imagination, and I was a super, super energetic, spazzy kid. So all of those things just, and then because we didn't really have a tremendous amount of, let's say, parental supervision or whatever, the television became, and then also my video games through the television became worlds that I explored and lived in and loved. And so I was already being influenced by all of my favorite cartoons and TV shows. And those became, I don't know that they were my friends necessarily, but I loved them and I wanted to emulate them and I wanted to be a part of them. So all of those things, I think, kind of put me into the place for that. Having a household where though I didn't know it at the time, where I didn't understand self-love, where I didn't know that I wasn't feeling fully loved or fully worthy of the life that I was living as a kid. These are all very subconscious things. But certainly I'm sure that led to part of me going and wanting to find that in strangers, find that in the approval, literally the approval of people going and sitting in seats in a theater and applauding me at the end of a play or laughing at the jokes throughout it. That all of a sudden, like I was saying before, gave me not just an outlet for all of this other stuff, but it gave me the validation that I so desperately was seeking and needing, which is, by the way, what almost every actor that comes to Hollywood is dealing with on some level. Because why the heck else are you trying to go and make all these
Totally. And how do we balance that? Like, I love the fact that we're talking about this, because how do we balance that? So we all love, from a genuine place, also making other people happy.
Yeah.
We all need appreciation in our life. We all need to feel some level of significance and some level that we matter, that our work and our words has an impact on others.
Yeah.
Where have you found that balance between not letting other people's opinions and approval lead or mislead you, versus when is it right and okay to feel that? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Oh,
like,
I totally.
Like,
I mean,
I want to hear your. I want to hear your thought process. Like, where are you finding that balance between knowing that we all, like, it's the same with me. Like, when I make a video, of course I want people to connect with it. Of course I want people to resonate with it, because that's also my service. It's my offering. It's where I get to be an instrument, and it's where I get to feel useful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you only let the likes and the views and the shares and the reviews of movies guide how you feel about yourself, that's where I found it. That's my balance. It's like I should know how I feel about. So I say happiness or self-love to me, and I'd love your definition.
Yeah.
My definition of self-love is how I feel about myself when I'm by myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's my definition of self-love. Yes.
Yeah.
What's your definition of self-love, and how does it start?
Well, I think similar. I think probably very similar. I mean, I didn't realize how much I didn't like hanging out with myself until I went to this really incredible life-saving therapy. I thought I did. I mean, people would talk about self-love all the time. I was like, I love me. I'm good with me. I feel good, you know, but I didn't realize that when I would be quiet, when I would just be with me, I was always looking for I would go play video games, you know, but that's not really spending time with yourself. That you're now a simulated version of you in some cool world on another planet shooting aliens or whatever, but that's not really spending time with yourself. No. But I've always been a very, very deep thinker and feeler. So I've spent a lot of time in thought. It just wouldn't necessarily be about me, and it wouldn't be kind to me. My self-talk, again, that I thought was just normal, when I would screw up, when I wouldn't do things the way that I thought they should be done, and this was all based on the way I was programmed, bad programming by my parents, I would destroy myself in my mind. And when I talked to these folks in therapy, and they were like, why do you talk to yourself that way? And I go, well, because this, that, and the other. And they go, well, would you ever, if your friend did something that you thought wasn't great, would you talk to them that way? And I was like, I would never talk to them that way. And then why would you talk to yourself that way?
100%.
And I don't know why I'd never put that together, but it leveled me. I was like, I guess because I genuinely don't like myself. I genuinely don't love myself. So what self-love is, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to kind of define, I suppose, but because there's so much around it. But I would say that to love yourself is to hopefully, finally, and by the way, and it's a daily thing, because we can go back and forth on it, right? It's not like, oh, that's solved and we're done and we can move on. It's a process, it's a journey, and you always have to check in with yourself. And I think that, you know, for me, it's been a matter of, you know, one of the things, I spend time in prayer in the morning, and I spend time in prayer at night, and that's kind of my meditative time as well. And you know, and a regular part of those prayers is thanking God for my heart, my mind, and my body, because these are all things that I have ridiculed in various ways over the years and not embraced and not been grateful for. gratitude is one of, to me, the most powerful balms for your soul, for your heart, for your mind. To start with that and to say, wherever I'm at right now, thank you for who I am and where I'm at, and to appreciate that and be okay with where you are right now. If you can be okay with where you are right now, you can really start to love yourself. If you're not okay with where you are right now, it's very difficult to then love yourself, because they're working, they're contradicting one another, you know, and how to balance that. I mean, one of the things, I've never, I don't have like notifications on my social media. I've never, I started social media at a time where I was already living in the public eye. So that's, you kind of get inundated, you know, with that many followers. And so fortunately, I've never lived, my world has never been one where I was constantly looking for the likes. I always, even when I was unhealthy and didn't know it, I always knew in the back of my mind that's not a healthy way to be living your life. You can't, if you're posting things and you're constantly checking to see who checked in and who liked it and whatever. And by the way, not that I'm completely faultless and all that. Certainly there's times I'll post something and I'll go back and see, I wonder who's chimed in or whatever, you know? But I have never found my worth there. But I have definitely tried, you know, I've looked for and found my worth in my work, in, you know, how am I doing good work? I mean, I thought I was failing my life for a long time because all of the jobs that I had done never really put me into the next echelon, or, you know, that higher level where I was with all the cool kids, doing all the cool kid movies and a part of those conversations. I just always felt like I was on the outside looking in. And that wrecked me on a regular basis. I always felt like I wasn't doing something right, or I wasn't good enough, or...
And I think that's the question. Like when I'm listening to that, that's the question to me. It's when you're doing something, do you feel fulfilled by doing it in and of itself? Or are you only gaining fulfillment when someone applauds? Right? Like that's that differentiation, that self-awareness. And for me, self-awareness is like the heart of self-love.
Yeah.
Because just getting to that point.
To know yourself. To love yourself.
Yeah. To know yourself first and then to love yourself, because you can't love someone you don't know.
No.
Right? Like I can't say... Go on.
I know what you're saying. And I agree. I don't know that... You can't fully appreciate or love. To fully love yourself means to love even all of the failure.
Correct.
Even all of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do think on a general, broad philosophical sense, we 100% can and need to love those that we don't know.
Oh, that 100%. 100%.
That's all.
No, I 100%. From a humanity standpoint, I'll give you an example of what I mean. Like today you walk through the door.
Yeah.
And I love you for being a human, and I love you for what I've learned about you in preparing for this.
Ditto.
100%. But I can't love you fully because I haven't got to know you. Whereas the more I get to know you in this interview, the more I fall in love with you.
Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That even with ourselves,
knowledge makes the love deeper.
Correct. That's what I mean.
Sure.
That's what I'm coming for. Like when you're subconsciously.
Well, that's empathy.
Exactly.
That's empathy. You know, but again, and how interesting though is that then take it another step, which is. Certainly, the more you might get to know somebody, the deeper you can love them. But that's only if that's only predicated on how deep you know and love yourself first.
Correct, 100%.
Which is so, like, I really thought I was somebody who loved people really deeply.